Welcome to Feel, Peel, Thrive, formerly Food Feels Banana Peels, a holistic podcast created to inspire a shift in perspective. Here, we explore what it really means to feel, peel back the layers, and thrive from the inside out. Each episode invites you to consider a shift in your perspective on what it truly means to be healthy, beyond quick fixes or trends, and to see wellness as an empowered, inside-out journey rooted in awareness, accountability, and self-trust. I'm your host, Laura Pfeiffer, and I'm here to guide honest, heart-centered conversations that help you reconnect with your body, realign with your values, and live with greater clarity, connection, and vitality. Because when we learn to feel, we can heal. And when we peel back the stories that hold us back, we make space to thrive. Welcome back to Feel, Peel, Thrive, a space where we slow down, we tune in, and we explore what it really means to live in alignment with our body, our mind, and our spirit. And today, we're extending that same awareness to the animals that we love so deeply. Because when we begin to see health through a more holistic lens, we realize our pets are not separate from us. They feel, they respond, they mirror us, and they thrive when we nourish them on every level, physically, emotionally, and energetically. I'm really excited for today's conversation. It's a beautiful invitation into a deeper level of understanding. I'm joined by Dr. Judy Morgan. She's a pioneer in holistic veterinary medicine with over 40 years experience supporting animals through a more natural, integrative approach. She's a veterinarian, an acupuncturist, a chiropractor, a food therapist, a best-selling author, and a passionate advocate for empowering pet parents to take an active role in their animals' well-being. Dr. Judy's work is rooted in the belief that true health goes far beyond symptom management. It's about honoring the whole being, from whole food nutrition and minimizing toxic exposures to understanding the emotional and energetic lives of our pets. She brings a perspective that is both deeply grounded and incredibly expansive. In this episode, we explore what it means to care for our pets in a way that supports their vitality, not just physically, but in mind, spirit, emotion. We talk about the connection between our own state of being and our pet's health, the power of nourishment through food and environment, and how we can become more intuitive and conscious caregivers for our pets. This conversation is really for anyone who has ever felt that their pet is more than just an animal, and is ready to deepen that relationship in a way that supports healing, longevity, and thriving for both of you. Let's dive in. Welcome today, Dr. Judy. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm so excited about this conversation. I have been trying to apply so many things that I talk about and practice in my own life and think about them from a holistic view for pets ever since I heard from you. And we had this brief introduction earlier and have come to realize, why do we look at our pets any differently than we look at humans?
Yeah, we need to kind of take a step back and say, well, things that our veterinarian tells us, if our pediatrician told us to do those things with our children, we would run screaming out of the building. But for our pets, it seems to make perfect sense to put dry, burnt brown balls in the food bowl twice a day with nothing else and think that that is all the nutrients that they need. And, I once I had my printing guy do it, a box of cereal, and it's called Human Kibble. And it says, with all the nutrition that your child needs. And if your pediatrician told you to just pour those little brown balls into your child's food bowl twice a day and never give them anything else, you'd say, what? It would make no sense at all. So, but this is what we've been told for so many years with our pets. And, I don't know, you're in Canada. I don't know how Canada is, but the childhood vaccination schedule in the US has gotten way out of hand. Same thing with the vaccination schedule for our pets, way out of hand.
Yes, agreed. I believe that we have a lot of similarities, and there may even be instances whereby Canada is even succeeds what's going on there in the US. And I have so many things that I want to discuss with you today, Dr. Judy. Tell us a little bit about you and, your background and how you came to understand and practice from a very different perspective than a lot of veterinarians approach veterinary medicine.
It was all accidental. I grew up in a very, very traditional household. I went to veterinary school in the Midwest in the early 1980s. We're talking very, very traditional. And I practiced traditional medicine for the first 10 years in practice, and I almost quit. I really hated it. I didn't like what we were doing. I didn't like what I was seeing, and I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I was on a treadmill. And I accidentally took a chiropractic course because it had a different name to it. And the card that came in the mail said, sign up for this course and you'll help your patients heal faster. And, orthopedic problems will go away and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, that would be great. Let's add something new here. And I had no idea what it was. And when I went to the course after a few hours, I said, this guy's talking about chiropractic and animals. I don't even know if I believe in people. And I had paid a lot of money for the class. So I said, well, okay, I guess I'm sticking this one out. And when I went back to work the next week, I said, well, let's give this a try. Still pretty skeptical about the whole thing. And it was life-changing. The differences I was making, and animals that were carried in because they couldn't walk, that ran out of the building. And I'm like, okay, there must be something to this. And so after I did that for a while, I was like, well, if this works so well, what else is out there? There's got to be other things. And so then I started studying homeopathy, but it didn't really resonate with me. It wasn't something that I wanted to dive in head first. And for homeopathy, I feel like I could spend my entire lifetime studying that and never have a good enough understanding of it. It is so very, very, very specific. And I have good friends who are homeopaths, so I leave it up to them. So then I studied Chinese medicine, and acupuncture was the first thing that I studied and absolutely loved it. And what I found was that the acupuncture points and the chiropractic areas that needed adjustment always aligned, always matched. I was like, how about that? So this is just going to strengthen everything that I'm doing with that. And once I started diving into acupuncture, I learned that the other branches of Chinese medicine are Chinese herbals, Tui Na, which is sort of a combination chiropractic and massage. So that fit in really well, and food therapy. And I never realized how much of an effect food has on our bodies until I started studying food therapy. And so that came what really resonated for me. And so every holistic practitioner that you talk to, they're going to have one modality. They may practice a lot of them. They're always going to have one that it's like, oh, that's my thing. So I have a good friend who her nickname is the oily vet. Her thing is essential oils, and that's all she does is essential oils. So we all find kind of that one thing that is just like, I need to do this for every single animal that walks in. And so for me, that became food therapy. So, food's the foundation of life. We always have to fix that. And then we add all these other things on. And then I started doing cold laser and a lot of other modalities. And then as holistic clients would come in, they would teach me new things. Like I would have clients, I had one client who came in with these raindrop cards and they had raindrop crystals on them. And I'm like, what are those? Oh, it's raindrop therapy. Okay. So, and she would hold up a card and say, no, not that one, this one, no, this one's for it. And I'm like, fine, you understand that I'm all for it. And so, I learned about light therapy, color therapy, red light therapy, laser. I just, it just kept adding on and adding on. And it's interesting. I was featured on the cover of Veterinary Practice News. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember when. Late 1990s, maybe. And in the article, they said, she's holistic before it was cool to be holistic. I was like, I wasn't doing it to be cool. I was just doing it because it worked. So, just for me, it changed everything about the way I practice and about the way I treat my own animals. And then when I just late in my practice years, I said, social media is becoming popular. And if I get on social media and start teaching people, I can teach a lot more people. In my practice, I can impact 20 to 30 animals a day. With what we're doing now with our educational platform, we have affected tens of millions of animals and their families. And so that's been really important to be able to spread the word and, get more help for more people and more animals.
Absolutely amazing. And I think it's so important because a lot of people just don't know, right? There are
Right.
the people who are going to follow. There are people who will feed that kibble to their child when the pediatrician says it's okay. And then they, and then there are people, and more people are coming to question what we've been told is normal. So not only are we doing that with our own bodies, finally, in my opinion, but we also can apply that to our pets because our pets are a reflection of us, right? We are all kind of mirroring each other. So I want to talk about a few aspects of, kind of the application of the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspect of our pets, because a lot of people see your pet as a physical, it's a physical being, it's a dog, right? That's a dog. This is a human. And I mean, my dog eats better than many humans. She eats raw, she eats veggies, she eats all of these things. And I, don't put any medication into her that I don't have to, all of these things, but it's because I respect that, I know that my body runs well when I do these certain things that are clean and whole. So why, for both of my dogs, why would I then turn around and feed them food when I look at the labels of the conventional dog foods? It makes me want to barf because most of it, I have no idea what the heck it is, and all of these fillers and even dyes and things. Like, why do we need to change the properties of the food so much to make it like prettier for our dogs? Like, give me a break.
No, that's being made pretty for the owner of the dog. The dog can't even
Fair,
see the colors.
fair,
Dog does not care.
fair. Yeah. So when we look at, let's talk about kind of from the top down. So let's talk about our dog. I know everybody's going to want to go into nutrition, and I feel like once we go there, we're going to be able to go in there and we're just going to be able to keep going. I'm a holistic nutritionist as well. Food is medicine, and absolutely. So I wanted to talk about kind of the spiritual aspect of our pets. A lot of times we don't look at our pets as being these sentient beings. Can we talk a little bit about that? That might help people to understand
Sure.
a little more.
So, mental health for our pets is just as important as their physical health. And many, many times it's overlooked. So, we have great studies showing that indoor cats are highly, highly stressed. When we look at
Mm-hmm.
their microbiomes, when we look at their cortisol levels, they are very stressed individuals because they're not allowed to do cat things. And many of our dogs are not allowed to do dog things. And we get mad at them when they do those animal things. So we did a really interesting study with a microbiome company. I have 9 cats. 7 live outside 100% of the time. I have a farm. So they're running around the farm, chasing, pouncing, hunting. They and all of my cats, the 2 indoor and 7 outdoor, are all fed raw food. They're all fed the same food. They're all minimally vaccinated. So it was a really good study. The only variable was we've got these live outside and these live
Mm-hmm.
inside. The microbiome on the outside cats was beautiful. And by the way, the coats and the physiques on those outside cats who are now about 5 years old, beautiful because they are active, energetic, climbing, doing their
Mm-hmm.
thing. My indoor cats have very poor muscling. They are older, but they have very poor muscling and their microbiome looked terrible compared to the outdoor cats. And I think my indoor cats are not very stressed. They don't do anything. They don't have anything to do. They have areas where they can climb, but their microbiomes were totally different. And that's just stress. My indoor cats don't interact very much with anybody, people, dogs, or each other. So I think they're they're partly stressed by lack of interaction. They don't get to climb, hunt, pounce, go after prey. So we know that cats need that kind of interaction. So for people who have, and I get it, for people who live not where I live, it can be very dangerous outside for
Mm-hmm.
cats. They've got
Mm-hmm.
predators, they've got cars that run them over, all kinds of things that can happen to them. But we need to provide that for them inside. So they need vertical space. Cats love vertical climbing. That's why they're always on your refrigerator. They're on your kitchen counters. And we're like, get off the counter. Well, they're looking for vertical space. So make that for them somehow. Shelves on your wall, something they can climb up. They also need that ability to hunt and pounce on prey and win. So laser tag is something that a lot of people like to do with their cats. It's a great game. The cats absolutely love it. But when you turn that laser off, put it back in your pocket and walk away, your cat's sitting there going, where to go? Wait, I didn't win. You've got to let them win. Throw down a toy, throw down a treat, something that they can pounce on at the end, and they get to win and go, man, I'm amazing. I'm the king of the jungle. So we have to give them that chance. And I also would highly recommend they make the cat grass that you can grow for them to munch on. They really like that. So for our dogs, many of us live in apartments or work 8 hours away from home. We're gone for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And your dog is sad when you leave. They say everybody should get dog cameras and watch what your dogs do all day. Kind of sad. But then when you come home at the end of the day, you've had a bad day, it's been busy, you got to make dinner, and you're like, yeah, here's your dinner, go away. It's very bad for them. They need mental stimulation. So, and particularly like when we get a dog, usually we don't think about, does this dog breed that I'm getting fit the lifestyle that I'm living? Like if you want to have a border collie or an Aussie or a lab, I would strongly recommend being a person who really likes to go hiking, who likes to let them swim in the lake, who's going to get out in nature and do something. If you have a working breed, like a herding dog or a protection dog, you better find them an outlet for that. So, I used to say to people, okay, you have this border collie, it's a working dog. What does it do all day? Well, it sits in the house while I go to work all day. Well, what do you do at night when you come home? I take him for a walk. Okay, he needs to herd something. You're either going to have to get ducks or chickens or sheep or grandchildren, something for this dog to herd. Like he needs a job, he needs something to do. And we have all these behavior problems with our animals, whether it's separation anxiety, anxiety in general, destructiveness. And, we get mad at them when they bark, when the mailman delivers our mail to our door. It's like, well, but this is my house, and I'm alerting that there's an intruder at my house. And we're like, stop it, stop it, stop it. No, it's really, wow, thank you for alerting me that somebody is here. I mean, that's enough now, but thank you for alerting me that somebody's here. So I have a 10-pound Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. The nickname for a Cavalier is a love sponge. Mine is not a love sponge. Mine is the guardian of my house. He's 10 pounds. And he thinks that he should guard the house. My daughter comes in my house every single day. He bites her every single day. Only her, nobody else. I don't know why.
Wow.
He told the communicator it's because it's fun.
Okay.
And I said, well, can you tell him to stop? She said, I asked him if he would stop. And he said, no, because it's fun and he likes the drama. I'm like, thankfully, my daughter kind of takes it pretty well. But interestingly, I brought that dog to work with me today. And he was sitting here next to me. And my daughter walked in the building and he totally ignored her. And I said, well, he didn't bite you today. And she goes, well, he bit me yesterday at your house. And I said, yeah, but the difference is he's guarding my house. He doesn't have to guard the office. So he's, while I don't like that he does it, he thinks it's his job to protect the house. And I don't know why he protects it against her, but so I accept it as I don't like it, but he's doing what he thinks is his job. And so we need to give them an outlet. We need to give them entertainment. So it's great that, so many people now want to do agility with their dogs, dock diving, barn hunt, obedient. I don't care what it is, but those interactions and bonding, because let's face it, if you have one dog, who are they bonding with? It's you. Somebody in the family. They're going to bond with somebody in the family. And even if you have multiple dogs, they still want interaction with the people. It's, interaction with each other is not really enough. They still want to interact with, because you're the head of the pack.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful segue into the emotional aspect of our animals, because, I'm fairly intuitive with my animals, and while I don't think I have 100% communication with them, I definitely can tell their moods, their energies, all of those things. They often mirror me.
Oh, yeah.
So, when my emotions are high, whether it be in a joyous state or even a panic state, like any of those kinds of things, like they are are there. And so I feel like if sometimes if we look at what is going on with our dogs, it can also show us to some degree perhaps what is going on with us. Does that seem in alignment?
Oh, absolutely. So I interviewed a trainer once, and she was a trainer who worked on the emotional aspect of, families and their dogs. And she told me a story. She went in to train a small poodle. It was an older husband and wife, and the poodle kept biting the husband. Was, very attached to the wife and kept biting the husband. And so when the husband and wife sat down on the sofa, the poodle got in between them and kept the husband at the other end of the sofa, kept in between. And so as this person, she's not just a trainer, she's like a counselor and all these other things. So as she's talking to them, she finds out that the wife really doesn't like the husband that much. And she really doesn't want to be close to the husband. And guess what? The dog was the vessel that kept the husband from being in close contact with the wife. So they ended up going through counseling for the two of them. And once the wife decided that she actually liked the husband and we actually do want to stay married and have a good relationship, all the biting stopped and the poodle didn't have to be between them anymore. But the poodle was definitely taking all those signals from the woman who was saying, I don't want this person near me. And so the dog's like, okay, got it. I'm going to handle it for you. And when the woman changed her thinking, the dog's behavior totally changed. So I think that most of our pets' behavior problems are from us.
I think so too. I think so too. Absolutely. And most of our own behavior problems, they all come from us. So when we look at the common denominator in all of this is oneself.
Exactly.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about there. Two things kind of came up there because energetics wise, we know that dogs are far more sensitive with things like even just like sense of smell and all of those things, right? And energetically, dogs, cats, whatever, whatever we are referring to with our pets, they're these sentient beings and they pick up on a lot more than I believe that we give them credit for. Can you
Oh,
speak
yeah.
to that a little bit?
Well, when we're talking about scent, we have 6 million scent receptors. They have 200 million. Not even close.
Right.
So they're always going, the studies have shown that dogs can detect cancer when there's only 2 cells. I mean, they're pretty brilliant. Why do we use animals for therapy? I used to visit a senior assisted living homes quite often. And I had this menagerie, this very weird menagerie of animals I would take with me into these living facilities. We had a llama, a pygmy goat, 2 miniature horses, a chicken, a chinchilla, a cat, and a dog. Very weird group. But I would load them all up and we would take them like literally right into the living rooms with these people. One little old lady woke up once and the llama was standing next to her and she was like, you can't have that in here. I'm like, yeah, I can. But the what happens, we would take these animals into veterans hospitals, people that haven't spoken in years, people that don't move, they're catatonic. And you bring an animal and you place it in their lap, and people that haven't spoken in years will talk to the animal. They'll move and pet the animals. They provide so much for us. And they're interesting because they know who needs the help. They know who to go to. They will seek them out. So if there is somebody in your family who is struggling, whether it's emotionally, physically, the animals will seek them out. My parents moved in with us when my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia. And he wasn't very mobile and he had a big lift chair in the living room. And my dad grew up in a family where cats were just awful. When they moved in with us, it's like, well, I've got all these cats. Guess where the cats always wanted to be? The cats always wanted to sit on my dad's lap. And he would kind of get this like panicked, like, oh, there's a cat. I'm like, yep, being a lap warmer, just let him sit. And he got used to it after a while. But the animals know they will seek out those who need comfort, and they mirror our emotions. They mirror our illnesses. It is
Mhm.
amazing in practice. People come in and I diagnose their dog with allergies. Oh, well, of course, every one of my kids has allergies. I diagnose the dog with inflammatory bowel disease. I have inflammatory bowel disease too. Diagnose the dog. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, well, okay, there's a reason why all of you are struggling with the same things. And sometimes it's an environmental reason. Maybe you all have itching and allergy because you have plugins and, synthetic
Yeah,
air fresheners being used all
right.
over your house. Why don't we clean up the environment? Maybe the dog has inflammatory bowel disease from anxiety because you are such a nervous Nelly and you're making your dog a little bit nuts, or your
Yes.
cat, or whatever. So a lot of times when we're seeing these issues, I have had so many conversations. I had a woman after COVID. She was a woman who exercised all the time. So before COVID, she was always at the gym, had a lot of gym friends. She was just like, I just have to work out like 7 or 8 hours a day, or I just can't stand myself. Okay, a little obsessive. Maybe we should work on that, but that's for somebody else to deal with, not me. So
Right.
when COVID happened and she couldn't go to the gym, she made it a gym in her garage, converted her garage into a full-fledged gym for just her. And she had a golden retriever, and the golden retriever was having all kinds of GI issues. And so she did a consultation with me and she explained this whole situation. And I said, well, what's a dog do all day while you're in your garage
Mm-hmm.
gym? Oh, she
Mm-hmm.
lays in the corner.
No.
I said, the dog needs a job. I don't care what job you find for that dog. Tell that dog is there to guard and make sure you don't fall off a piece of equipment. I don't care what you tell that dog, but that dog needs a job. That dog needs to feel important. That dog has
Mm.
anxiety. I know she's just laying in the corner and doesn't look like she has anxiety, but it is affecting her GI system. And, we'll make some tweaks, but you have got to solve the emotional part of what is going on with this dog. And so she did. And I finally got her out of the garage a little bit to take the dog outside and like, why don't we go play outside for a while and get some exercise that way, and get a little bit of vitamin D and stimulation. And it actually ended up helping both of them immensely. The dog's GI problems cleared up, but the dog was just frustrated, so frustrated. Like, I sit here in the corner all day and watch you do this, and
Mm-hmm.
what am I doing? So yeah, absolutely. Everything that we do, they're going to suck it in, and it can show up in very weird ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find that my dog mirrors me sometimes when I have some different physical things going on that I know about.
Mm-hmm.
It will present sometimes in my dog first.
Yep.
And I'm like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, like my dog has this going on. I know this is coming for me. I better go ahead and, like take care of it. So that's a beautiful way to learn a little bit more even about ourselves is to look into
Mm-hmm.
our pets, and if we see this this mirroring aspect, to look at them physically, mentally, emotionally, all of these things, and maybe they can be great teachers from this
Oh, absolutely.
perspective. Now, the,
Absolutely.
the other thing that I wanted to talk about while we're on this is love, because love, and I don't know if you have any studies or anything about vibrationally how animals vibrationally resonate or anything, but love, and then I've come to learn that authenticity are the two highest vibrations that we have in, like, kind of clinically recorded, if you will. And so it feels like pets are love, and I'm not just talking about my own pet. I'm talking about, when you're I believe that we can only love another, whether that be a pet or a person or whatever, to the capacity that we can love ourselves. And that's been my experience in my journey, because I've had a journey that I have had to find self-love. And on that journey, I have bonded differently with my animals. I have, animals that come to me now. Like, I don't even have to do anything. It's just, you're emanating that. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about love and our animals, because we as humans now have become so kind of segregated. We don't rely on community like we used to. And so this is a place that I believe that a lot of humans are turning to find that missing, maybe, love, belonging, all of those things that pets can provide for us.
So our animals have unconditional love. And I've done a ton of rescue work, and it is amazing. You can take an animal who has been neglected, abused, and bring them into a loving household. And sometimes, they're shy, especially when I do puppy mill rescues. These are dogs that have lived in a 2x2 cage for their entire life. Sometimes, we get them when they're 8 years old and they've never seen grass, they've never been outside. And so they'll be very fearful at the beginning. Once they get beyond the fear stage, then they become unconditional love. And it is amazing that an animal who has been neglected or abused can then bond so closely and show so much love. And like one of mine that I rescued, she was rescued when she was like 5 and she had been in a puppy mill. And so she was very afraid of certain things. She was very afraid of men in ball caps. So clearly her puppy mill owner had a ball cap. So nobody wore a ball cap around Laura. But Laura ended up being my heart dog and being so bonded and, and reliant on me to also provide that same unconditional love to her. But, when you have a bad day at work and you come in and you're just cranky and, you're just like, now I got to make dinner and blah, 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 blah. And your dog is like, what are we doing? I'm so happy. Like, oh, you're the best person in the world. And you're like throwing things on the counter and they're like, no, come on, come on, come on. Let's, that's how they are. We also see this if an animal has a terminal diagnosis. We love our animals, and we walk into the veterinary office and the veterinarian says, I'm sorry to tell you, he's got cancer, kidney failure, liver disease, heart disease. He's got 2 months to live. And what's our response? Anticipatory grief. We are instantly in, I can't live without them. What am I going to do? And your dog's like, what's for dinner? What are we doing? Let's go play. Because they don't have that anticipation. They live in the moment. They live for what are we doing right now? Is anybody serving food right now? Because I'm in. Are we throwing the ball? I'm in. Are we going to cuddle? I'm in. They don't have those negative emotions that we do, which is why they're such great teachers for us. And so when I would have to give bad news to somebody, or when somebody would come to me and they'd already gotten the bad news, and when I've had bad news with my own pets, first of all, I look at it and I go, well, that's just a bit of a challenge. What am I going to do about it? So when our 15-year-old English toy spaniel a few years ago was diagnosed with bladder cancer, and no surgery for it, no, I wouldn't do chemo and radiation anyway, but really nothing we could do. And I said, well, I don't buy that there's nothing we can do. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to tweak his diet, and I'm going to add some herbs, and I'm going to add some mushrooms, and I'm going to do my magic. I'm going to add all these things in. And then I consulted with another holistic friend and said, this is my plan. Okay, good. Let's tweak it this way. Great, got it. And that little guy, I never told him he was sick. He never knew. He didn't care. He felt great. At 17, he was still playing with the youngsters, and he died at 17, not from his cancer. He died with his cancer, not from his cancer. And, so for me, I always I get this bad diagnosis and I'm like, all right, well, that means something's out of whack. What do I do to realign things? How much realignment can I do, and how long can we have a good quality of life? So I really want people to kind of change their mindset a little bit about a bad diagnosis. I mean, one of my dogs went into heart failure and the cardiologist said, oh, he's got 3 months to live. I said, yeah, says you. Okay, no problem. I'm going to go home and I'm going to tweak things. And we lost him 24 months later. And, so for me, it's like, well, I could sit around and cry that he's going to die, or I could be proactive, and then I could also make sure that I enjoy every single day. We had one diagnosed with intestinal lymphosarcoma. Really bad diagnosis. And that was the only time I ever agreed to have an animal have chemo. Looking back on it, I don't know if I would do it again. But at 4 weeks in on chemo, they proclaimed her cured. No tumors on her ultrasound. And we said, maybe this chemo stuff works. Went back week 5 and we had 3 new tumors. I said, maybe that chemo stuff doesn't work. And she only made it 8 weeks from the time of diagnosis till being gone. But, people were like, oh, aren't you so sad? You didn't have her that long, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I have no regrets because from the day she was diagnosed, every single morning, my husband and I got up and said, what does Myra want to do today? No, I'm still working. My husband was retired, but I'm still working and we had things to do. But every morning it was, what does Myra want to do today? And so we had 10 dogs. So she would pick a friend and we would take the friend with us and we would go to a pet store and buy toys. We would go out to lunch and order, a hamburger with no bun or a turkey burger with no bun. We'd go to restaurants where the dogs could go. And we just found, oh, we want to go explore this new park. Oh, we want to go down to the lake. We want to go. And every single day we did something fun. And we did that for 8 weeks. And when we finally had to let her go, I was like, I don't have any regrets. My Lord, we had probably the best 8 weeks of that dog's life. So, and again, the dog was not grieving. The dog was not saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to die soon. The dog was not saying, I feel terrible. The dog was saying, what are we doing today? I think it would be great if all of us could adopt that mindset.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I came to recognize on my own health journey is that a diagnosis doesn't have to be a prognosis. And we put so much faith, and sometimes I believe it's blind faith, in our care providers. And we don't question and we just go, okay. And I mean, the mind is a very strong tool in creation. And so if we tell ourselves that our dog is going to die in the next 3 months because somebody's told us that, then it's likely going to happen what we think we create, right? If we look for these alternative ways, perhaps it's really about perceiving reality differently. And that's what we're talking about here, right? The reality of our pets, and it all comes back to the reality of ourselves. And when we start to open our eyes and go, hang on a second, you know what? There could be a different way, right? It doesn't always have to be the same way. And I love that you talk about what dogs are teaching us, or pets in and of themselves, because being in the present moment is the most beautiful gift that we can give ourselves. And if they are, living that every single day of their lives, and they are drawing us into that way of living, well, then, we don't have to worry about all this, fear and things from the past and all of these perceived threats of the future and anxiety. It becomes this beautiful tool for living in the moment. So another reason to have a pet, that unconditional love, the present moment awareness, the mirror aspect. Like, I mean, there's so many. I'm learning and connecting. You're connecting so many kind of dots for me, Dr. Judy. This is absolutely amazing.
We know from traditional studies, having a dog, particularly if let's say you're a senior person living alone, a dog is company. A dog lowers your blood pressure. A dog keeps you mobile because you have to take the dog out and walk it. In my case, I have dogs I have to pick up to put onto the bed because they can't get there by themselves. They're too small. I have to take them back off the bed. I have to let them in. I have to let them out. I have to feed them twice a day. It's so my mom lives with us. She's 89 and she feeds all of the cats inside and outside. She feeds all of the chickens and she cleans the chicken coop every day. She's 89. And I had this thought one day, a few months ago. I was like, man, I shouldn't let her clean the chicken coop. That's a lot of work. And then the next moment I had the thought of, no, she needs to keep cleaning the chicken coop because it's keeping her mobile and active and agile. And yeah, okay, mom, you clean the chicken coop. It's fine by me. So, the animals can provide so much for us. I mean, my gosh, if I had to live alone, I already have a lot of animals, but I would definitely have a lot of animals. So I'd have somebody to talk. My sister lives alone. She has 2 dogs. She talks to them 24/7. She never stops.
They're good listeners, right? They never talk back, like our kids, like all of those things, right? Yeah, for sure. I think it's really important to recognize how much they can bring to our lives. And so when we loop back to the physical aspect of what everybody thinks of, the physical aspect of the dog and what we feed and how we nutritionally support our dogs, perhaps some of this kind of information that you've provided up to this point can help bring that perspective shift. Because my understanding is, and I don't know a lot about regulatory bodies and things like that of veterinary medicine, or nor do I know a ton about, allopathic medicine from a regulatory body standpoint, but it seems that there are a fair bit of, how do I say it? There are regulations that one must follow, things that one must recommend that are in alignment with certain regulatory bodies. And you can't, do this if you're calling yourself a regular veterinarian and you're under this regulatory body. So you can't recommend these certain things. Is that correct? And are veterinarians a little bit kind of like hamstringed a little bit by regulatory bodies at all?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So our regulatory bodies, AVMA, which is the American Veterinary Medical Association, AHA, the American Animal Hospital Association, on their websites, they have statements that say that we should recommend not ever feeding raw food because of the dangers of bacterial contamination, illness, blah, 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 blah. So that's what they post on their regulatory sites. However, if a veterinarian like me or other holistic veterinarians want to tell their clients, hey, we recommend raw feeding, they're not going to fault us for that. It's not regulated to the point where we can't recommend that. They are getting more and more all about standard of care, which is really horrible because it's standardized medicine. It's also very expensive medicine, and it takes any of the actual thought process and creative process away from the individual veterinarian to practice on the individual pet. It's sort of like, no, this is standard of care. You have to do all these diagnostics. You have to do all these treatments. That many holistic veterinarians have been fined or had their licenses suspended for using alternative treatments instead of what they consider standard of care. And so that can be a big, big battle in a courtroom. If you are standing there saying, no, fecal transplants are a great thing and they heal a lot of things, they're using them in human medicine now. But, if you do a fecal transplant and you don't give all the medications along with it that they recommend, then you are at fault for not practicing the standard of care. So, I think there's going to be more battles over that in the future. But unfortunately, veterinary medicine is becoming corporatized. So Mars, the candy company, also big pet food manufacturer. They are one of the top two. It's Mars and Nestle Purina are the top two in the world. Something like 32
Nestle has their hand in
each.
everything, don't they?
Oh,
Nestle,
yeah.
Bayer,
Oh,
like they
yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah, Zoetis. So unfortunately, Mars owns thousands and thousands and thousands of veterinary hospitals across the world. It's not just US, it's across the world. So they own VCA and Banfield and Blue Pearl. They own 2/3 of the specialty and emergency hospitals in the United States. And because of that, they also get to set the pricing for everything. And so for, let's say somebody has an emergency surgery that they need, and it can only be done by a board certified surgeon, they don't have a lot of choice on where that gets done, or what the pricing is, because it's all under one umbrella. My daughter had her dog in for vomiting and diarrhea. She chewed up a toy, and it was on a Friday morning. And our regular veterinarian said, oh, it's Friday morning. If she needs surgery, we're not here on the weekend. We close at 5 o'clock on Friday. Better take her to a specialty center. She had to call 5 to find one that would even take her. She was in the hospital for a little under 48 hours, never did need surgery, and the bill was $7,200 just for fluids and imaging.
Wow.
Luckily, she has insurance, but that is crazy. Like, I look at that and think, well, if that had been in my hospital, you might have walked out with $1,000 bill over 2 days. So it's gotten the industry is not going in the right direction. And unfortunately, the money for veterinary education and veterinary continuing education comes mainly from big pharmaceutical companies and big pet food companies. And so that's where all the advertising is. And, that's really where the training comes. And I like to not fault the veterinarians because when they're in school, they're taught there's only one way to do it. They're
Mm-hmm.
not taught that we can be free thinking and say, well, maybe not every dog needs every vaccination every year, because you're taught, no, every dog needs every vaccination every year. And then you get out and you go, geez, this hunting dog over here has a lot different lifestyle than this dog that lives in an apartment in New York City. Like,
Yes.
why am I giving them the same thing? And
Mm-hmm.
why do they recommend every animal every month all year long be on parasite prevention? Like, my dogs at my house have very different exposure than somebody who is, hiking in the mountains with their dog, with groups of dogs, or going to dog parks, or spending a lot of time around shelter animals. It's crazy that we've lost the individual care and we've made everything, this is the way we do it.
And it's very reflective of society and how we treat our people as well, right?
Yeah,
Allopathic
exactly.
medicine is exactly the same, and now we're doing this to animals. And this is where, you spreading your knowledge in these broader spaces on, doing podcasts and things like that, it becomes this opportunity, like you said, to share with a lot more people because a lot of people I don't feel are well informed. Maybe people are informed from, your basic news sources, if you will, that are
Unfortunately, the pharmaceutical ads for the things for pets that you see on TV run far, far away from most of them. Kind of this, I really wish I don't know why the US allows pharmaceutical commercials on TV. Most countries have banned it.
man, you have a lot. You have so many.
So interestingly, when I wrote my first book, I was at a media event. And so there were hundreds of media outlets there. And one of the morning shows, they really liked what I was doing and what I was talking about. And actually, I had written two books and I had them both with me. And one of them was a cookbook for dogs. And so I was already, this is very early in my holistic career, I was already speaking out against big pet food. And the one company representative, they were like, oh man, you'd be so perfect for our show, but we can't have you on because our biggest advertisers are Mars and Purina. And I went,
Mm,
okay.
yep.
Ad money talks. And so, it's pretty impossible to get on big media where all of their funding is coming from pharmaceutical companies. I
Hmm.
mean, literally, that is billions of dollars a year.
And this is where I think ethics come into it, right? Because we make decisions as practitioners. Where do our standards lie? Where do our ethics lie? And I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I just know where my own personal standards are. And I've said to my partner before, like if somebody offered me like $5 million to advertise this Ensure drink, I would give him the finger and walk away and say like I can't in moral
Yeah.
consciousness actually do this. And I think that's where unfortunately some people make those decisions based on maybe not what's not necessarily right for the animal or what they know, but based on other carrots dangling in front of them that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a young couple who are big influencers in the pet space on social media. And they started out being big influencers for holistic health, raw feeding, doing everything naturally. Somebody offered them enough money somewhere along the way, and now they're
Wow.
like, oh, raw feeding is terrible, making your own food is terrible, oh, kibble is wonderful.
Oh,
They did 180-degree shift. And I was like, who paid you and how much did it take?
how tragic.
Very tragic. But it just goes to
Yes.
show you, their heart wasn't really in the right place. At the beginning, it's like, oh, this holistic thing, yeah, this is really getting some traction. We should jump on this bandwagon. Oh, wait a minute, there's more money over here.
Right.
I'm sorry, I can't be part of that.
I did want to speak a little bit about nutrition. Just a few tips on what people can look for.
Okay. So, nutrition is one of the biggest myths for our pets extruded, ultra processed food, AKA kibble, dry pet food, the stuff you pour out of a bag for cats and dogs. Absolutely the worst thing we can feed our pets. It is manufactured at high heat multiple times. So it goes through multiple steps in the process, very, very high heat. When food is processed at those high heats, we get AGEs, advanced glycation end products, which are cancer causing. So that's the first problem. Second problem, we cook all the nutrients out, so we have to add back in a synthetic vitamin mineral mix to make it fit the profile that the feed control officials say that we have to meet for, this much vitamin A, B, whatever. So we have synthetic vitamins and minerals. Then we also have to spray it with fats and palatants, which is basically something to make it taste like it's not a dead, dry brown ball. So, and it's sprayed with things that are not really healthy. And they basically make your pet addicted, just like, Doritos have things in them to be addictive. So you can't eat just one. I think that's the ad campaign for Lay's.
Lay's, so. Yes.
But you can't eat just one because of things that are put in there that make you always have to go back for more. And so when we're putting this food in the bowl, it's very high in carbohydrates, and our pets have zero requirement for carbohydrates in their diet. They have protein, fat, vitamin, and mineral requirements, but zero requirement for carbohydrates. In order to get a food to stick into a kibble, it has to have some sort of starch. So kibble products are actually 50 to 60% carbohydrates, and our pets have zero requirement. Those ingredients are also much cheaper than meat proteins. That's the most expensive part of the diet. So, of course, there's going to be very little of that in there. So that's the first problem. Our cats are obligate carnivores. They are meatosauruses. They need meat. The only way that they can survive on that dry kibble is because they add back in the amino acids that they are not getting because they're not eating meat. They add in the vitamins and minerals that they're not getting by eating meat. However, that's not going to make your animals thrive. Your animals will thrive if they are getting the vitamins, minerals, and amino acids that they need from whole foods. And unfortunately, all of the food waste products from the human food industry go to pet food. So 9 times out of 10, what you're feeding your pet is waste products that were not fit for human consumption. I'm sorry, I do not want my animals eating waste products not fit for human consumption. And if there is a rendered ingredient, which would be like a meat animal digest, things where, they make a big vat and they cook it down to a soup, and then they scrape off the fat and use that, and then they dry all of the soup and make it into a powder. And they use that in pet food. The head of the largest rendering association in the US gave the keynote speech at one of the feed control official meetings. And in his keynote address, he said it is virtually impossible to have a rendered ingredient without euthanasia solution in it. So there is euthanasia solution in a lot of pet food. FDA knows it. They find it non-actionable because it is in a low enough amount that it shouldn't cause a problem. Did cause a problem for one pet food company where a dog died from euthanasia solution in the food. All the other dogs in the house got sick. They got sued. They paid some money, wiped their hands of it, and they're still in business. A few years ago, there was a big notice. I think it was with the Smucker's company. A lot of their products tested positive for euthanasia solution, and FDA said, it's not enough for a recall. Like, I don't want any euthanasia solution in my dog's food. So I am a raw feeder. I also will feed gently cooked. Sometimes I make my own food. Mostly I rely on 4 or 5 companies that I really trust, and you can find that list on my website. But I firmly believe that in order for our pets to thrive, they need human grade food in their bowl. And so for anybody who is feeding kibble and you can't make a drastic change, the best thing that you can do, and this was shown at a study at Purdue University many years ago, they took a litter of Labradors and they split them in half because, they have big litters. And one half was fed kibble only, and the other half was fed kibble, and 25% of their food was fresh food. So eggs and leafy greens and that sort of thing. And the dogs with 25% fresh food lived 2 to 3 years longer. So just that little bit of fresh food can make a huge difference. So, there's certain things that our dogs can't eat. They can't eat grapes and raisins. So don't use those. But other berries and fresh fruits are amazing for them. Eggs, dark leafy greens, mushrooms, things that are healthy for us are so healthy for our animals. Sometimes we can get our cats to eat them as well. But if you're cooking a chicken breast and it doesn't have a bunch of spices and you didn't slather 20 pounds of butter on it, go ahead and share that. Share some of that with your pets. Ideally, I would like to see everybody feeding a raw or gently cooked human grade food. We have been very fortunate, and I think this is being driven by the pet owners and the consumers, certainly not being driven by the veterinary market, but we are seeing a lot of small companies coming on board making really high quality foods. I haven't been to Canada for a while, but I was up there speaking about 8 years ago. And so every time I go somewhere new, I check out the pet stores and see what they have available. And the small independent pet stores are going to be your best resource for finding fresh foods, finding what brands are good. I can tell you what brands are good here in this country. I can't tell you what's good in Canada. But what you are really looking for is, what is their sourcing? Are they using only waste products from the human food industry? Or because when animals die out, a cow dies in the field, that cow wasn't slaughtered to be used for food. It can't go to the human food industry. It goes to pet food. When animals go to slaughter and they get to the slaughterhouse and they find a cancerous lesion or, something wrong with a piece of muscle, that goes in a big barrel, and that barrel goes to pet food. That's, they just are passing something. The Chesapeake Bay watershed in Maryland in the US, the blue catfish that are caught there are very high in PCBs and heavy metals. They cannot be used for the human food industry if they're over a certain size. And so they just passed a law that, we'll send them to pet food. Because I don't know, our pets miraculously don't have a problem with PCBs and heavy metals. How does that make any sense at all? And I think this was, was a lobbying effort by big pet food groups. And, it's a cheap source of fish meal. So let me tell you, my dogs and cats will not be eating blue catfish from the East Coast. So, unfortunately, diving into all that information and staying up to date on all the ways they try to cheat us, it's a little bit daunting. But that's why we have people like me and Susan Thixton at truthaboutpetfood.com. Great resource. She puts out a list every year, and she does have some Canadian companies on her pet food list for the best quality companies. She does a lot of research to go into that. So that would be a really good resource for everybody, truthaboutpetfood.com. And then my website, drjudymorgan.com or naturallyhealthypets.com. It's all the same. Tons of information on there. And so we try, in our social media, we try really hard to keep everybody up to date on, kind of the latest things that are being done. And we talk a lot about the dangerous chemicals and things that are drugs that are being pushed on our pets that we really should avoid. So.
And you also have some great resources on your website too, not only resources available for free, like PDFs, downloads, those kinds of things. You also have products. One of the ones that caught my eye is I use a natural tick prevention. And, my first dog, he's 10 now. And I believe there's energetics involved in this too, but he's very lumpy. And he was fed a high grade kibble until I kind of got, became more aware of myself, and then by consequence him. And he also took tick medication. He's black, he's a doodle. We live in tick haven around where I am. But I went to this tick collar called EMs. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of them. They're a Japanese bead with a baked-in microorganism that does something with the red blood cells of the body, and I've actually seen them on the dogs dead, just like I did when I had the other tick medication, right, that I was giving systemically. So one of the things, I just wanted to bring that up because you have lots of great resources. I think it was like a tick around something that you put on the collar that you have.
We have so many things. So the biggest problem with fleas and ticks is that only 5% of their life cycle is spent on the pet. And we all get crazy about giving chemicals to our pets. But the other problem is that in order for those chemicals to work, the tick has to bite the dog. So we're not preventing tick-borne diseases because the tick is biting the dog. So our goal is to repel. So yes, there are ultrasonic tags, there are scalar wave tags, and I recommend doing things in layers. So you can use a tag, but then I would also use a topical essential oil spray, or we have like a neem yarrow powder. And then we also have what I call feed throughs, which you could use fresh garlic. Fresh garlic is an amazing repellent. Coconut oil is an amazing repellent. But some of the powders that you can add to the food have garlic, neem, yarrow, a lot of different things that basically make your pet not real tasty. And the fleas and ticks are kind of like, yeah, it kind of smells funny. I'm going to go the other way. So, people need to realize that. So if you're having a flea and tick problem, you can treat your yard. My sister lives in Massachusetts, huge tick problems there, obviously. She has her yard sprayed with cedar oil every month, spring to fall. And that is very helpful. And I have a friend in Georgia who does the same thing. And then we have beneficial nematodes, which are little itty bitty kind of microscopic bugs, and you can spray those in your yard and they don't allow the fleas and ticks to mature. So we need to break the life cycle and not be so focused on how many chemicals can I put in or on the pet. Instead, looking at how do I get all of this out of their environment? And clearly, if you go hiking through the woods, you have hunting dogs that are out in the fields. I have a great story about hunting dogs. I was asked to speak in Ohio at the Pointer National Specialty quite a few years ago by one of my clients. And so I went out and I spoke. And it was really cool because part of the national specialty, the dogs have to go do a field trial and go out in the field with their owners and hunt. So about 100 dogs left in the morning. And my client had sprayed herself with her dog's essential oil spray and also sprayed it on the dog. At the end of the day, 100 dogs came in. One came in with no ticks. And that was my client with the essential oil spray. Everybody else had chemicals on. Chemicals don't repel. And so they had to wait for the ticks to bite their dogs and then die and fall off, or they had to pick them off. So the next day, I only had like 7 bottles of the spray with me. So everybody bought the bottles and, shared them around, and everybody went out with essential oil spray the next day because they all said, that stuff worked and this other stuff didn't. How about that? Because it repels.
Coming back to the earth, right? The earth provides what we need. And I mean, all of these other pharmaceutical companies and companies trying to control the food and all of these things, coming up with all these synthetics. But if we come back to basics, the earth will provide what we need. And all of this extra stuff is really just detouring humanity in a different direction that is not positive. Well, look where we are now,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Dr. Judy, I greatly appreciate our conversation today. I feel like I could probably talk to you for many more hours. And with your over 40 years of experience, you probably have so many amazing stories and experiences that you could share. And you also have a podcast.
I do. It's Naturally Healthy Pets Podcast.
Beautiful. So if you want to hear more from Dr. Judy and all that she has to offer, check that out on her website. It was lovely and really an honor to chat with you today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
And Dr. Judy, you are also including code so that people can purchase any of your materials that you have at a discount price. If you want to learn more, that'll all be in the show notes as well. It was wonderful to chat with you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Feel, Peel, Thrive. I'm so grateful you're here and part of this space for reflection and growth. If something from today's episode spoke to you, please share it with a friend or someone who might need it. And take a moment to rate, comment, or leave a short review for me on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. It really helps the podcast to grow and keeps these conversations flowing to more people who are ready to shift how they see health and healing. Together, we can help more people feel, peel, and thrive from the inside out.